Greetings, humans! I'm Galadriel, and I'm here to create fantastical things for your enjoyment and possible edification. Welcome back, humans! Today it's time for me to get started on Kelta's shirt. Again, Kelta is my co-author's main character in the book that we're publishing this December. So Kelta wears this loose tunic-like shirt with a mandarin collar, and I'm going to be using this lovely blue cotton. This happens to be my co-author's favorite shade of blue, and Kelta shares a lot of her taste in color and clothing, so this will be the material I'm using for Kelta's shirt. Now I'm going to be using this pattern right here, Butterick 4828, and I'm going to be using this variation here with the simple loose sleeves with a cuff, though I might shorten the cuff a little bit to be more like the one that you see here. So without any further ado, let's get sewing. Here are the pieces all cut out. 2 sleeves, 1 back piece cut on the fold with darts marked, 2 front pieces with darts marked, and the sleeve cuffs. Now I'm ready to start sewing.
I thought about using a standard Chinese style shirt for Kelta, but I ended up choosing this slightly more Renaissance kind of pattern instead, because the Taxian culture, while it does have some Chinese stylistic influences in the design and the world building, is not an Asian culture and is not supposed to be a direct analog to an Asian culture. So I thought it might be better to use the more puffy cuffed sleeves instead of the straight Chinese style sleeves. And you'll notice also, if you look at the pattern that I showed you earlier, or again if you see as I go toward the end of the video, that I'm not using a true mandarin collar. This is actually all cut in one piece, so the collar just kind of curves up the shoulders onto the neck. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to look out, so look when it's done, so it's kind of an experiment, but I'm really looking forward to seeing it and hoping that it doesn't look just straight up Asian. I'm making quite a wide hem, technically because it needed to be a little bit shorter, but it also adds a nice bit of weight to the bottom. I am now stitching this up not with a regular stitch, but with a decorative stitch in a light blue thread that should stand out nicely against the darker fabric. For those of you more interested in the actual sewing process, this shirt is French seamed, which means that all of the seams are initially stitched on what will eventually be the outside of the garment. Then what I do is I fold all the seams back on themselves so that the raw edges are then stitched inside basically a little tube that's seamed a second time. That little tube of fabric is then on the inside, as you'll see as I keep going through this process. This is basically, if you don't have a serger and you can't do anything about your raw edges, this is a relatively easy way of making sure that you get nice smooth seams that aren't going to fray or rip as easily, but it does mean that you have to leave a lot more seam allowance, which can be a little annoying. Right here you see me doing the French seam. First I'm stitching on one side, now I've folded it over so it looks like I'm stitching on the outside of the seam. It almost looks like top stitching right now, but I'm going to go ahead and stitch up that little tube. My original plan was to gather the sleeves in according to the pattern and then attach them to buttoned sleeve cuffs, but I decided I wanted to change things up a little bit, make this shirt a little bit more unique and feel more like it came from a fantasy culture instead of an off-the-shelf pattern. So I decided that I was actually going to pleat the sleeves to add a little bit more symmetry as they gather into the cuffs.
I'm almost finished with the shirt. At this point, all of the pieces are assembled. I have the sleeve cuffs all pinned together, but this section I will now have to hand stitch because the sleeve cuffs are made for slender wrists and do not fit over the sewing machine.
I'm also not going to add buttons to the cuffs. I decided that they actually looked really nice just hanging open, so I figured that that would be sort of a cool little design feature that could help make the shirt stand out. I've pinned up the front seams. You can see again how the collar is one piece with the rest of it. Obligatory pause to look at my cute dog being cute. And now I've gone ahead and stitched up the front of the shirt using the same decorative stitch. Again, this gives you a better view of the collar. And I've also gone ahead and marked where I'm going to attach these little frog fastenings. I'm super happy with these. The swirly design on them makes me think of Celtic knots a little bit, which is actually extremely correct for the Taxian culture, which values knot work very highly and uses it actually as part of their language and symbology.
Here it is, all finished. I'm very happy with how it turned out. The sleeves are lovely. I like the cuffs. I'm very fond of the frog fastenings and the light blue decorative stitching down the front and along the hem at the bottom. Overall, I'd say it's a great success. So, thanks for following me through this process. Next time around, I'm going to be doing Kelta's jacket before starting on Ren's costume. So, like, subscribe, make sure you don't miss the next video if you want to keep seeing the costume. Until next time, fare thee well.